Hi folks, this is the second part of a two-part episode on the life of ex-informer Martin McGartland. If you haven't listened to the first part, I'd recommend checking that out first before tuning into this one. This is the Troubles Podcast, a podcast about the violence and bloodshed that occurred in Northern Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, and Great Britain, as multiple sides and organisations waged a bloody conflict over the status of Northern Ireland. So where do we leave off? Martin has been kidnapped by some provisional IRA members who have been keeping him in an apartment. It would appear that they were waiting on other IRA members to arrive, who would torture and execute Martin. Fully aware of this, Martin decided to dive through the window of the apartment and take his chances, not knowing what floor he was on. So let's get back to Martin.
And then also I remember is coming in there to consciousness, and a woman who didn't know it, and my friend didn't either, or I didn't, nobody didn't know it saying, a woman who was holding on to me, and she kept saying to me, don't worry son, the ambulance is going to come, and it was like, obviously I'm unconscious, so I don't do this. The only thing they said afterwards from the medical records and from people who was there, but what happened was I'm on the ground, and they ran down the stairs because they panicked. They think, fuck me, he's escaped the IRA, he's going to the arson, will be more trouble than him. So they grabbed the hold of me, lifeless, bleeding profusely, and they started to drag me to try and, I presume, get me back to where I came from, which would have been stupid because there's not a big hole in the window. So what happens is they're dragging me away, but a woman from one of the houses across didn't know what was going on. She just thought these three guys are happening as one lifeless guy. And what happened was she started to get like sort of like very vocal, and I presume they panicked and they ran away. So what happened was she's holding me and I'm coming in near to consciousness, and she's saying, don't worry about it, son, you're going to be okay, the ambulance is going to be coming soon, and all these different things. And I'm in near to conscious, and then the next thing I remember, I'm in a hospital, and when I come round, I automatically asked the nurse to call 220 office, which is Belfast West Special Branch office, and I get the number, and I call her, ring him and tell him that Carol now called me and Carol was in the hospital. They have to get somebody here, and Special Branch actually came to the hospital. I was so relieved, but reading between the lines, what happened was, and this is me just speaking to you completely with the full knowledge of me doing ball breaking, so frustrating and so time-consuming, 35 years of my own investigations and asking questions and forcing people into giving me information that they would never want to get to me, but it just didn't go away. My belief is this, that at least, I know one of them, the Dukes of Mulhern was working for Special Branch. He's admitted that. If you do research, he's admitted that he killed him. He was working for Special Branch. And in the audio recording that he made, the Special Branch, the IRA handed the recording over to his dad, Frank. He admitted in the recording that he had done working for the Special Branch for at least 2 years before, or 2 or 3 years before his, before they actually kidnapped him and interrogated him. And it meant that he was working for Special Branch before I was kidnapping and before he was involved in my kidnapping. So he would have told his handlers he was involved in advance, or he was going to be involved.
Martin went on to explain his injuries after jumping out the window.
My arm was cut to shreds. I had a real bad head injury, and I think I had some broken teeth. My whole arm was ripped to shreds where the glass opposite got into my arm. Finger ripped to pieces. I think I had about at least 2 or 3 teeth broken that I had to get fixed in Palace Barracks. They wouldn't let me go to a dentist. I had to let the army fix my teeth. And my head, I had a real bad, I got my head checked many sort of like, I think it was months later, and they said that the damage to my skull was so severe that it caused a little bit of scarring on the brain.
And nobody could visit you in the hospital? Like, could your mom come in and visit you? Or now your cover was blown, so you basically have to disappear? Is that kind of the way it was?
No one can visit me. And in fact, they took me to the hospital very quickly. I had to recover virtually under the army medical sort of treatment, and it was pretty sort of like minimal. And in some times it was like, non-existent. But that was because the IRA's reach, especially I was brought to the Belfast Royal Victoria Hospital on the Falls Road. I mean, the IRA can get people in there if they so wish.
So they obviously wants to get you out of the country as quickly as possible.
Well, they didn't. They kept me in Palace Barracks right up until about September. I think it was September or October. I didn't get moved out of Palace Barracks and sent over to the mainland until September, October. So a few months later.
And how does that work? Do they say, okay, well, look, your cover's blown, so now you're going to have a brilliant life paid for by us, and thank you for your service, and you lived happily ever after? Or I'm assuming that's not going to be the case.
I only found out in recent years that I actually had to pay my own flight out of the United Kingdom. Had to pay my own flight. I mean, I mentioned in the book that I actually left on a boat. That I did that obviously for security reasons, because when I wrote the book back in 1995, 96, was published in 97, my identity hadn't been exposed. So I mentioned in the book I left by boat to try and give the impression it was left to Scotland or somewhere. But what happened was I actually went by plane, and at that time they actually sent me to Newcastle upon Tyne. That's where I was living that's where I was living in during my first identity. And I was living under the name of Martin Ashe, A-S-H-E. But that was all exposed after the cops took me to a court case for allegations of perverting a course of justice.
So Martin is living under the name Martin Ashe in the UK. And I asked him if the British government was paying for all of this.
They weren't giving me nothing. What happened was, this is the God's truth. I applied for compensation for jumping out the window, right? And because I actually went to do a programme with BBC Inside Story in 1982, the special branch where they were actually out to set low scores, so they turned against me. But what they done was, when the compensation agency contacted the cops to say, I want you to give us a statement, they said to the compensation agency that he never worked for us before. He's never worked for us. He's a terrorist, and he's been involved in terrorism. Oh,
so they completely washed their hands of you?
Yeah.
But who gave you this? Who gave you this identity? Who gave you the accommodation you stayed in? Like, how did?
Well, no. Listen, they gave me an identity. They gave me an identity at the start because I'd done a program off of that. They gave me an identity in 1981, but in 1983 I'd done a program, and the reason why I'd done a program for it was because they fucked me over. They helped me in a flat in a little town in the northeast of England called Wallsend, and it was absolutely atrocious. There was ringing completely with mould, dampness, slugs in the bathroom. It was a disgrace. And I had my partner, Angie, move to with me. She came to live with me in England with my two sons for a short period of time, and then she went back home because she had homesick. But they expected me to live in that place with her. And then they bought me a house as part of my resettlement. But what happened was, I found out later on, right, that £50,000 of my resettlement money was virtually, for want of a better word, stolen and misappropriated. I can prove that they stole 50, my solicitor even with them, 50 grand of my money went missing. They put a claim in for a house for £120,000. This is all in documentary evidence from the Criminal Compensation Board. They tried to say that they bought me a house. I think they said the house was £85,000 on £40,000 cash, whatever. It's all enemies. And what was, I could prove from my solicitor and from Land Registry that the house was only £52,000. So £50,000 are close odds to £50,000 went missing. They also put a claim in for rent that they said that they were paying on my behalf in Freedom. They were trying to say for the old shitty flat to put me in, they were paying rent of £600 or £700 a month. And the flats at that time were getting into it for 200 a month. And also, what I also found out was, I also found out that I travelled to Newcastle upon Tyne with an IEC man who accompanied me. He actually went with me to Newcastle upon Tyne. He introduced me to the local pubs and stuff. And what happened was, right, I found out through my solicitor many years later that I paid for my own flight and the flight with the IEC man who fucking went with me.
So during this time, Martin was living as Martin Ashe, but he also held on to his old Northern Irish driving licence, which had his original name on it. This was because when family visited him, they could not know his new identity. When they were with him, if police stopped him, Martin would show them his McGartland driving licence. By this stage, Martin had written his first book and had been speaking out critically of the Northern Irish police force on TV shows and in interviews. According to Martin, this made him deeply unpopular with the British police and justice system, who, as you could imagine, would have had to support him in the wake of his coming out as an informer. So even though they knew he was living with a secret identity, Martin was brought to court charged with perverting the course of justice. He then explained what happened in court.
The cops, what happened was, I couldn't believe this, right? When I got to court, this is the God's truth. When I got to court, someone from DVLA, Driving Licence Authority, who the cops called as a witness, she was called Philippa Brennan. I'm sure, I mentioned it in the book, it's in the second book, Dead Man Run. A girl called Philippa Brennan from the DVLA, and also the cop who done me was a guy called Trevor Wilton, but he would have been under the direction and control of the fucking special branch. But what happened was, both of them in court read out my current, at the time, home address, and my name was read out in court. They cross-referenced Martin McGartland and Martin Ashe, so everything was exposed.
So you reckon, well, so then once that happened, the IRA got your information basically, or did you have to change an identity?
Once that happened, right, the IRA, who knew nothing until that came, didn't know where it was, didn't know what it was called, didn't know what area it was, didn't know my home address, quite obviously, found out everything. But the cops, because they hated me so much, and they were working hand in glove with the security services, MI5, and also the cops in Ireland, because it was Northumbria Police, what happened was, right, they hated me so much, they're even sending cops to my house. This is the God's truth. They sent cops to my house from Cumbria, the League District, saying they were coming to see you because the local police have told us you've got an AK-47 and there was a bank robbery at Barclays Bank in Windermere. Somebody was carrying an AK-47, and I think it was you. Before the court case, my barrister gave a legal opinion to say your defence is duress of circumstances on the grounds that you're living in a very, very sort of highly secretive environment where you're under really, really severe, serious danger from the people who actually kidnapped you and want you dead. And as a result, you had to take those precautions using your license and your birth name when you were meeting your family. So they didn't know your new identity. And so it wasn't cross-reference. But cops knew all these things. And what happened was they're just trying to... My solicitor, my barrister, if you look online, my barrister said, I won the court case after a 5-day trial. The jury deliberated for 10 minutes and they unanimously found me not guilty. And the judge said at the very end, and this is in print in public, the judge says at the very end that this man has clearly lived a very, very dangerous life. And he says he certainly doesn't appear to me to be a man with criminal tendencies. So he more or less given them a finger saying, use me at a big cock up here. And that led to me actually needing them murdered. But you know what? I don't care what anybody says. I believe that the cops wanted that to happen. And not only do I believe that they want that to happen, but I also believe that they knew that the people who was actually tracking me down and who were sent to actually murder me, I believe that they would have known they were in the area, because the cops have admitted since my shooting that the people, the active service unit who actually carried out my shooting, were in the area for 10 days. 10 days.
So his new name and address is now on the public record, and he was not particularly liked by British police at this stage. But there was another group who he was even more unpopular with.
Basically, I'm living after the court case. Now, you have to appreciate the court case ended in 1997, 1997. That's whenever I got acquitted. And the local police, special branch, MI5, were saying, you're going to be safe. The IRA won't be to touch you in this area. They're not interested in you. Don't worry, you've just been paranoid. Just carry on as normal. And obviously I wasn't hopping on that. And remember, the IRA actually murdered Ian Cowans in January 1989, only a few months before he shot me. Yeah, they were very active. And I was even in the front page of somebody were saying, I'm Nick's on the front page. So it wasn't, it all actually turned out that I did. Obviously, they get shot shortly after that. But I'm actually living in the Newcastle upon Tyne area. No one's helping me. I'm on my own. Special branch of disowned me, abandoned. And I'm in a situation where first I'm after myself. What happens is I actually had to leave my property because they read the DVLA and also that lady, Bren from the DVLA who I mentioned, Philippa Bren, and also PC Trevor Walton. They read my home address in their evidence in chief during the court case. My home address was mentioned in paper. So the IRA knew what was written. So what happened was I couldn't go back to the house. So I was actually living in a car, and the News of the World even done a news story on me, had a picture of me, obviously a picture of me staying in a car in a motorway service station. I was on my own. No one to help me. So what happened was I lived basically like place to place, couldn't go back home for quite a period of time. I end up having to buy a house. Me and my new partner, Joe, bought a house in Whitney Bay. And at that time, you need to remember, because of the court case, the publicity, everybody knew who I was. It was all whispers, that's that guy who's on TV, that with the court case, the spy on the highway, that's him, that's him. So everybody knew who I was and wouldn't help me to move. So we bought a house in Whitney Bay. And what happened was, shortly after we bought the house in 1998, the IRA shot me in June 1989. Now, what happened was, I actually came out of the house in the morning of the 17th of June, 1989. And I walked out and I had an up and over guy's door, and the car was in a yard, a small yard behind the guy's door. And there's a lane down the back of the actual, our street where our garage was. And I was going to get the car because I was taking my partner to work. She worked in a local sort of hairdressing salon. And it was about 8:30, just after 8:30 in the morning. So I walked out, opened the guy's door, looked down the street, looked up the street, didn't see nothing on the word, turned on my heel, get into the car. And that morning, I also had my car booked in to go to a local garage. And one of the guys, because everybody knew who I was, had asked me for a signed copy of the book. So I had the signed copy of the book. I threw it onto the passenger seat and it fell onto the floor. Did it open? And it was all folded. I thought I had bullets. So I reached over into the passenger seat and the car door was still open. And I actually reached over to lift the book. And when I got the book to lift up, I looked up and I just seen a figure in front of me. And I'm not joking you about. I got flung 2 loud explosions. I got flung from the driver's seat to the passenger seat like a rag doll. Bullets just forced into my body. And then what happened was, as I was actually trying to get up after being already shot twice, the actual gunman leaned into the car with a gun. And I'm on the passenger seat of this time now. Behind me is a wall. I can't get in. I can't escape. I'm at the mercy of this gunman. So I lunged forward, blood flying out of me. And I tried to push the gun away. Fired an arse shot right through my fucking hand. My hand was like ringing. So I just hacked the lunge forward and the gunman obviously panicked. So what happened was the gunman jumped backward. He's panicked and he started firing more shots. Now I get shot at least 6 or 7 times and then the gunman just left. And I'm in the car in the back lane. Hands shot, abdomen shot, leg shot. Honestly, I was in a terrible state. Blood was pumping out of me so fast that the car was saturated in blood. So I had to crawl out of the car. But when I crawled out of the car, I had to put my hands on the ground, and I didn't have some of my fingers. That was just skin. So I put my hand down to support myself, and I just dropped onto the ground. So I had to crawl out, and I thought, this gunman's going to come back. And I thought, I haven't got no fight left in me. I'm dead. So the gunman's gone by now, and it's a hot summer's morning, and I crawl over. And I don't know why I did this, but it was sort of like, I thought peaceful. I crawled over to the actual wall, which was surrounding our garden, and I shuffled myself, and I sat against the wall as if I was looking at my property. And my partner, Joe, had been up the stairs drying her hair to get ready to go for work. She didn't even know that they'd been shooting. So what happened was, when she looked out the window, some of my neighbours that came, and luckily for me, the whole 3 neighbours were first aid trained. Adam, Ben, Peter and Andrea, all 3 of them. Peter wasn't. The 2 sons and the mother all first trained, and they started taking parts of my clothes off and sticking them in the bullet holes, and they were using cling film and everything. And then when I stopped the bleeding, Bob, what happened? The cops were told that I'd been shot. People, the Connons, pulled them on the phone. It's Martin McGartland, he's been shot, he's in a bad way. The cops sent the armed response to the local metro station, which was about a quarter of a mile away, and they were told, stand there and wait. They were told they weren't allowed to go to the scene, and they kept the ambulance away. I was shot at 25 to 9 in the morning, and the ambulance wasn't allowed to be attended to me until 5 to 9 or 9 o'clock. And the surgeons told me that had I never had them first aid people, and if they hadn't patched me up, and what they did, the blood, because of the sudden entry and exit wounds, would have drained from me in a matter of minutes. He said they saved your life. The cops, I'm convinced, kept that ambulance and them cops away because they believed, we'll just let them bleed to death. Because at that time, I was in a big dispute with them. I was a thorn in their side. I was a really, really big embarrassment then.
I asked Martin to talk a little bit more about the gunmen.
There was 2. One of them was hiding. The one that would shot me was hiding in a little... you'll see it online. If you look online, especially on my pages, my Twitter pages, I've got all the photos on there. There's a photo of the actual van that the gunman hid in. He was hidden in a little van at the back green, and he was watching me when I opened the guy's door, and then when I opened the guy's door, he shot me. But there was another gunman at the front, because I had 2 cars. I had a real, like, a newish car, which was the one that I was using that morning because I had to go to the garage and I had the partner. But sometimes they were watching me because they had seen you. I used 2 cars, and I had a gunman at the front too. So if you can take the front, you did. If you can take the back, you did. So there was 2. And then whoever done the shooting left 1 vehicle behind, and they used to sit and keep gate was the getaway car. But what happened was, this is the God's truth. Everybody thought I wasn't going to make it, including me. Obviously, 7 times shot. And everybody thought, he's a goner, he's never going to make it. Obviously, I did, thank God. But what happened was, unknown to me until a number of days later, when I come out of surgery, my partner, Joe, and some other close friends were trying to get into the hospital. The cops had taken over virtually a whole ward, and they'd put all this reflective sort of film on the actual front, and they have armed officers all over the hospital, and they had me in a separate cubicle, but they had me in intensive care for the first couple of days. And they had armed cops inside. But what they done was, they took the TVs out of the ward. And I thought, what was they there for? And then my partner was coming in, or any visitors coming in with newspapers. They were taking the newspapers off them. And no one knew I. And I was to find it when I started to speak to my contacts, Liam Clark from the Sunday Times, God rest his soul, he's since passed away, John Cassidy, News of the World, said, Marty, did you see what the cops done? I said, no, what did I do? He says they put a fucking statement that, and they were doing it off the record. People were phoning up, all were ringing about Martin McGartland shooting. Oh, yeah, off the record. This was nothing at all to do with the IRA. It's a local dispute. between feuding drugs gangs, and Marty was a member of one of the drugs gangs.
So they tried to play you off as a drug dealer?
Yes. But I found it, didn't it? I found it, and I managed to get audio recordings of journalists, and some journalists give me statements to say that they told them it, and I sued them all, and all the newspapers had to pay me and my solicitors about £300,000 or £500,000. That's damages and costs. Mostly, damages was about £250. Cost was about fucking £300,000 or £400,000. But what happened was, right, to this day, Northumbria Police still deny I've done it. They're still denying it. But what happened was, more importantly, to this day, Northumbria Police, 27 years or 26 years, whatever it is, the anniversaries now a couple of days came on the 17th of June. Northumbria Police to this day have never admitted to me as the victim, nor to the public that the IOA shot me. They're still covering it this day.
That's baffling, isn't it?
It is fucking baffling. But I found out that one of the people who shot me, they got DNA, loads of DNA, and I found out from my own investigations, particularly from the John Butcher review, which was a botched job and a massive cover-up, I found out that a main suspect in my case had never been arrested, right up until John Butcher done a review of my case in 2017-18. So from 1999 to 2017, that suspect had never been arrested, even though they had all evidence to say that he was a main suspect, and I believe that was because that person is and was at the time an informer.
I asked Martin if he ever regretted becoming an informer.
You know what, now, over the last handful of years, I regret it immensely. I regret it immensely, but you know what? What I'd say is this, and I've had this conversation many times with different people. You get people going, oh, he's a terrorist, he's a rat. All the people who have that attitude and mindset, right? If you look on their profiles, they've got a Sinn Féin, some sort of a Sinn Féin sort of like image, or they're pro-IRA, and they're always the same type of characters. And one thing I would say is, I've said this, I would actually challenge anybody on this planet to look me in the eye and tell me what they would do if they knew that a person, another human being, was about to be murdered and they knew it was going to happen. Would they A, turn a blind eye, walk away and let it happen, or would they actually do something to prevent it? And if somebody tells me, I would just let it happen, I look them in the eye and say, well, that's what sort of person you are. That's in your DNA. If you will allow another human being to be harmed or murdered just because they're a police officer or a British soldier, then anybody who's got that mindset, right, they're not human. They're not human. I've not got no issues with anybody from the police or the army, and I never have done. My issues are with the people who were supposed to be looking after me. But I can tell you one thing, right? The IRA and the security services and special branch, in my eyes, are as bad as each other. But I can tell you another thing too. The MI5 and the special branch have done me more damage physically, mentally, and emotionally than the IRA could ever do if I was reincarnated 5 times over. I'm telling you that now. I'm telling you that now. And one thing I ever say to anybody, you know, if I could actually have any influence for anybody who was going to become involved with the security services or special branch, whether they be somebody who's English, Scottish, Welsh, Irish, Northern Irish, whatever, I would say to them, please, 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 look at the Raymond Gilmore case, look at my case, look at Kevin Fullerton, look at Willie Carden. There's many of them, and see the way that they treat people. They treat people worse than like animals. It's a disgrace.
You're never, like, the way, I don't know where I read this before, but the way it is like, even, maybe it was Gilmore, but it was like going into the station or whatever, and you're like, oh, I'm one of you guys. And they never ever felt it. They were always, there was almost a stain on being an informer on both sides. You know, so that's kind of the thing. It was, you know, of all of the lives that were saved in the end, they'll throw you away.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'm living proof of that, and Raymond Gilmore's even more living proof. And one thing I'll say is, I've never believed that Raymond Gilmore just died of natural causes. I've always believed that Raymond Gilmore took his own life because of the psychological pressures and the state that he was left in. I've always believed that. I believe that Raymond Gilmore took his own life. I spoke to Raymond Gilmore on the phone many, many times. And I've had conversations with Raymond Gilmore that really worried me. And I can tell you here and now, that man was driven to drink. And I think they did that purposely because they wanted him out of the way. And that's the way they want. If they can't get you using the law to actually try to punish you, they'll try and use whatever weapon is at their disposal. And one of their best weapons is to cut you adrift and make your life as difficult as possible. When I first met Raymond Gilmore, I was absolutely really so angry when I found out that he wasn't claiming any benefits and he was living virtually like his wife, God help her, was actually helping to, support him. He is.
I think you were sending him money as well. I think I had.
I was. But what I'm saying to you is, it's an app. When he died, they didn't even have the money to buy him. I had to start a GoFundMe page. I started a GoFundMe page. I put £1,000 in, and other people put in £1,000, and that's how he got buried. It's a disgrace. And to this day, Raymond Gilmore is living, he's actually buried in an unmarked grave. It's a disgrace. Raymond Gilmore, irrespective of what people say about him, right? Raymond Gilmore was a very courageous guy. Do you know one thing I'll say to you too while we're on the subject? When we're having this conversation about Special Branch in MI5, Special Branch in MI5 are the most ruthless cunts on the planet, that the IRA are as bad. You look at the cases of Darky Hughes, and you look at the case of the Price sisters, and you look at the case of, what other one springs to name? Darky Hughes, the Price sisters, Anthony McIntyre. See when the IRA turn against you, and Richard Russell, or the one Richard O'Rourke, they turned on him too. They're the most ruthless fuckers on the planet.
I asked Martin if he'd been back to Northern Ireland since he fled.
I've been back a few times. I mean, I actually went back. 97 was back. I was back about 2003 or 4, and I think was back in 2009.
Because I guess you're very careful with your identity as well, so nobody would really know what you look like.
There's a bit of a horror story. One time I went back and someone actually said to me, "I know who you are. You're Martin McGartland." Back in 1997.
Jesus, I'd be fucking gone. Go straight back to the airport.
But one thing you need to remember is, back in 97, I had only been gone a couple of years. I left in 1991. So I still look pretty familiar to people. But I mean, I made a sharp exit from the fucking ferry terminal. And I actually had to physically sleep rough till the next day.
And like, do you still think if your location was leaked, do you think your life would be still at risk to this day?
Well, no doubt, because of the real IRA put a death threat in me on 2008 or 9, and also in 2017. In 2017, the local cops, this is in the paper too, the local cops present me to tell me that there was a threat to Millie. So
it's still something that's very present. Like, are you still, when you get into your car, are you checking your car?
Everything, but you know what, honestly, my health, both physical but more so mentally, right, is so bad that I actually spend most of my time indoors. So I suffer from really, really preferring bad panic attacks, really bad panic attacks. So, and I mean, when you imagine, as I say to you, the anniversary is going to be I think it's 26 years, 26 years. I think it's the 26th anniversary on the 17th of this month. So what I'm saying to you is, as time has went by, it's got worse rather than like better.
Yeah, so 27 years now, you've had your new identity, you've been living in a new place. Nobody knows your backstory in this area now. You're not known at all.
Obviously, the local cops know me, but I don't trust the local cops.
Martin then began talking about the killing of British soldier Tony Harrison. He believes that this killing is the biggest regret of his time as an informer, that he couldn't prevent Harrison being killed, and he unwittingly drove the killers. Remember, folks, this is Martin's side of the story. I'm sure Tony Harrison's family would feel differently about what he is about to say. It's June 1991, shortly before Martin was kidnapped by the Provisional IRA. So in hindsight, Martin believes that they were onto him by now.
Bearing in mind, I was kidnapped by the IRA when I escaped in the 8th of August 1981, so only a few months apart. So at this age, the IRA already knew they were onto me. So what happened was, I was being ghosted by the IRA and snidey remarks and stuff and all, like, oh, Marty, we'll buy you a wreath, and Datey Adams is saying stuff and all, like, oh, how come every time you go out on a job, all things are going wrong, blah, blah, blah. There's all these snidey things happening, and all the jobs were all going pear-shaped. That was happening, and everyone was getting stopped. So what happens is, it was May that year, 1981. A lot of different people. I used to keep in contact with a lot of different people from the IRA, people who weren't even connected with my squad. And the special branch work, they were really, really persuading me to keep in contact with everybody because they want me to find out everything. And what happened was, there's a guy who I call Jimmy. He comes to me. Condre hasn't got a license, and he relies on other people to get him lifts here, there, and everywhere. So he comes to me and he says, Marty, will you do us a favour? We actually keep us over to East Belfast. And I went, yeah, I'll take over. And I never ask questions, because you don't, when you're connecting with people in the IRA, you only basically speak when you've been spoken to. You only ask questions when really you need to know answers. So what happened was, I'm heading over to East Belfast with him. And as we're driving over there, he's explained to me how, the IRA want me to shoot a soldier in East Belfast on the Hollywood Road at a bus stop. And we get to East Belfast, and he directs me to the bus stop on the main Hollywood Road, and we drive past it. He's looking at the bus stop, and I was under the impression that he believed that the actual guy that he was looking for, who he just says was a soldier, and I had him at it, we presumed it was a UDR soldier, because no British soldiers actually live in Belfast. You only get UDR soldiers, and I had stopped attacks on quite a few UDR soldiers in the whole time that I was there. So I regularly stopped operations against UDR soldiers. So what happened is, we got past the bus stop, nothing untoward. He asked me to drive into the streets off the main road. So we drive into the streets, and all these streets are all very up and down. There's rows of maybe, half a dozen streets from them, and they're all much the same. And one of these streets was called Navis Avenue. Now, Navis Avenue, I knew is going to become very important to the overall story. And we're driving up and down these streets, but I don't want to be obviously too sort of obvious, and I have to be careful that he doesn't see me paying attention to him. So when we're driving up and down these streets, he's looking at all the houses. He's not paying particular attention to one single individual house. He's looking at them all. And I'm under the impression that he doesn't know what he's looking for. He's just looking for a person. Doesn't get me no description. Alls I know soldier, I think UDR soldier. Long story short, after driving up and down these streets for probably best part of half an hour, maybe a bit longer, he decides that he's going to go back to West Belfast. I take him back. As soon as I get rid of him, I contact my handlers in the normal way, speak to Felix, explain to him what happened. When something like that happens, and because we don't know how urgent or how quickly the IRA is going to act today, tomorrow, next week, next month, Felix says to me, look, you have to come and meet me, and we need to discuss exactly what happened, and we'll take our driver in. Now, at that time when he says this to me, there's nothing to say that Jimmy isn't going to find somebody else in a different car to bring him over to the same place to start and round again up into this mystery soldier, I believe UDR soldier.
After dropping off the paramilitary, Martin immediately got in touch with his RUC Special Branch handler, Felix, to tell him what he knew, which wasn't much. Felix and Martin drove up and down the same route, trying to figure out who the provisionals were targeting. They had no idea if the IRA were planning an imminent attack.
So I'm in the Special Branch car, and I bring them, show them a bus stop, show them all the streets, and Felix is quickly and desperately writing notes on everything, and we're driving up and down the same streets, retracting all of the like places that Jimmy had taken me to. And all we know, soldier, special branch degrees, UDR soldier. So they making notes, doing all their stuff, and something happened in the street. When we were driving up one of the streets, there was a car sitting in the street, and it was an armoured, all you see, unmarked police car. And Fiddy stopped the car and got out and tapped the registration number, and he was irate because he thought that car shouldn't be left parked there, because obviously the IRA to put a bomb on it. So he made a note and went back to base, and the person who parked the car got into loads of shit. But what happens is, a Yin special branch said the same thing. We were in that area, up and down those streets for the best part of 45 minutes, maybe an hour. Fiddy said, right, have all the details off me. He's going to head back to Castlereagh, do some searches for UDR soldiers in the area. And that was it. It was left like that. My job was done. I didn't hear nothing more. Then what happens is, on the 19th of June, 1981, which was about 4 weeks after, I was told by Spud, my cell commander, that the messenger comes, says, Marty, you have to go to a meeting this afternoon with Spud. Give me the address. I goes to the meeting. Don't report to special branch because I only report after the meeting. Walks into the meeting. There's only 3 people there. Spud, another guy who I call and another guy called. Now, bear in mind, our cell had at least 8, 9, 10 people, so it was unusual just to see 3. And I thought something doesn't look quite right here. And almost immediately, Spud says to me, Marty, it isn't a meeting. We want you to go on a job. Well, when he said that to me, I thought, fuck, hell, I'm in this shit here. Because I knew right away. I mean, I got no way of warning anybody. I can't do nothing. And he said to me, look, there's a car parked outside, and it's basically like and hijack. The IRA had hijacked the car, and he said, you're going to drive Stephen over to what he wants you to take him, and Paul's going to travel over in a different car with somebody else. So I gets in the car with Stephen, leaves Spud, gets in the car with Stephen, haven't got no more information. And as I'm driving in the car with Stephen says to me, Marty, do you to West Belfast? And I say, well, yeah, I know. We want to we're heading over there. And I'm over in the car chatting away. He says, we'll run to a street called Navis Avenue. But when he said Navis Avenue, I remember being there with Jimmy and remember being there with Special Branch 20 weeks before. And the tanny dropped. Stephen's got a handgun with him. Paul's got a handgun with him in a different car. I head over to East Belfast, up to Navis Avenue. They say to me, park at the bottom of the street, like some sort of little parking area. Paul appears. He gets in the car that I'm in the getaway car. And they said, look, Marty, we're going to go into this house. And when we go in, we want you to drive up off the actually hear shots and you see us running, pick us up, kick us away, drop us off at a little sort of a nature, sort of like a walkway, which is just off of Bridge Road, which isn't far from the Navis Avenue. He says, and we'll make our way, drop the guns off with one of the couriers, we'll make our way back home. You go and dump the car and make your way back home. So I'm sitting at the bottom of the street. Both of them walks up the street. I'm sitting there shit myself thinking, Jesus, I hope Special Branch found him. Hope he's moved him. There's no one there. They're banging on the door. The door opens to disappear inside. Within seconds, dang, 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 dang. About 5 shots. And I thought, oh my God. I thought, will I drive away? Will I leave them? Will I do that? I'm still fucked. And I mean, if I don't do it, I'm still fucked. All emotions just gone through my head. So I started to drive up the street when I come out of the house, and the wheels in the car were skidding. I was really, I didn't know what to do. My head was like in bits. So they jumped in the car and they were talking about, did you shoot him? And they were saying, oh yeah, I shot him in the back of my head. And they were talking about what was happening. No. So I'm driving the car up the street. It's helping. They jumped into the car, the location I was supposed to drop them off. I shot up, parked the car where I was supposed to park it. I made my way home. They made my way home. I gets home, walk into the house for Angela, only in the house 5 minutes, cut the news on, and at first she come on the news right away to say that a man has been shot in East Belfast. He's believed to be a member, I think it says, of the security forces, and he's dead. And when I heard that, I thought to myself, I felt physically sick, But I also thought I'm going to be going to jail for a very, very long time, because Special Branch never ever told me that something like this might or could happen. And I'm in a situation where I'm driving a getaway car, but albeit dubious, I couldn't have possibly home that I was going to be asked to be involved in like an IRA operation where somebody was going to be shot in.
And you've named the two guys who were in the car with you.
Yeah, they're named in the book. It's all this has been in the book.
But I'm just curious. I wonder why they were never charged if they're named, you know?
I asked myself the same question.
As it turned out, Tony Harrison was a 21-year-old private who was serving with the 3rd Battalion of the Parachute Regiment. Though he wasn't meant to be living outside the barracks, Tony had been staying with his fiancée in East Belfast. And so his fate was sealed when he got into a taxi and told the taxi driver that he was a British soldier. The taxi driver, Noel Thompson, passed that information on to the IRA, who then targeted him. Thompson would go on to receive 12 years in prison for doing this.
I mean, long story short, I and Special Branch desperately tried to find this Miss B person. We didn't have a name. We didn't have an address. We didn't have any sort of identification. 4 weeks before this happened, we were actually in the area. We didn't know who this person was. All we knew that this person went to a bus stop, and we knew that he lived in one of them streets.
We're coming to the end of this interview, and after talking about the death of Tony, Martin went on to explain that he believes that he saved scores of lives due to the information he was passing on to Special Branch.
I can look at myself in the mirror and I got my calculations. My calculations are that I stopped at least 30 to 35 IRA operations. 30 to 35. I've always said the book 50 Dead Men Walking, my solicitor named, my publisher named the book 50 Dead Men Walking, and I says, oh, you can't say 50 Dead Men Walking. I could never save that many people's lives. And then it just dawned on me, I saved many more than 50, because I was only calculating one job was one person. If that massacre had happened in Bangor in that pub, it could have been a dozen soldiers. In fact, Spud Murphy said something to me, in paraphrasing, we're expecting, I think he said 20 or 30 dead soldiers. That's in the book. He said something like that, 20 or 30. He was expecting that one job. The one that was going to be the next carbon copy of Narrow Water, that could have been multiple. Radio 1 Roadshow, the IRA were going to put a bomb and the Radio 1 Roadshow up in Port Rouge, putting a bomb inside a ghetto blaster. That would have been massacre. Honestly, the things that I stopped were all multiple casualties or deaths. And I can look at myself in the mirror and think, listen, you know what? I tried my best. How the fuck can I wrote an article, or I wrote a letter, an open letter for the Daily Telegraph. They did my story, more or less criticising me. And I said to them, listen, we went and we searched the streets for up to an hour. We didn't have a name. We didn't know he was a British soldier. We had nothing to go on. We could not have done any more than we actually did. But you know what? That's not good enough for people. And rightly so. But you know what I say? Listen, if I had known any details about where Tony Harrison was staying, or if I had a name, or if I had known he was a British soldier, I believe he'd still be alive today. But we didn't know.
This brings us to the end of Martin McGartland's story. As it stands, Martin lives somewhere in England, and he very rarely leaves his house. Every time he has to get into his car, he checks underneath for bombs. And there's no doubt that wherever he goes, he's always looking over his shoulder.
You know, listen, honestly, I'll never be able to move off it, because you know what? It's going to have a really, really, till the day I leave this planet, it's going to always be a massive obstacle in my life. And the reason I say that for is because I actually have got so many things that actually I have to deal with, so many things, juggling balls relating to security, relating to this, relating to that. And what happens is, because I haven't got no one who would normally be looking after me, like people in Special Branch and I buy blah, blah, blah. And because I don't trust them, right, I have to deal with all the things to the best of my ability. And sometimes I may get things wrong. And if I get things wrong, it can be detrimental and it can have more of a serious effect. And what happens is it has a ripple effect. So I'm fucked. I just have to try to learn from bad mistakes and try to actually find my own way along and hope that I don't do something which is going to actually, I'm going to live to regret. I've always said, irrespective of what people say, they'll call people like me rat and informer and tight. And I say to them, do your homework, fucking agent. I infiltrated your organisation. You don't like it. And I can tell you here and now, and I can say this with my hand in my heart, anybody who's involved in their line of work, to me, in my eyes, are lower than a kiddie fiddler or a paedophile. If you're involved in terrorism, taking other people's lives, irrespective of what you tied to, like just at that, you're the lowest of the low. And I've always said that, and to me, I don't give two feathers what they call me. It's what Orthodox backed.
It's undeniable that Martin saved lives. But to become an informer meant that you were turning your back on your own people and placing the trust in institutions who promised to protect you. But if Martin's story is anything to go by, he was completely disposable. That's it from me. Thanks, and see you next time.